Daniel, very nice of you to join us. This is an unusual thing, memories, because I've been around a long time and I've got a lot of memories personally, but during my lifetime, not only just racing, I've met some remarkable people. So you come under that category. So first of all, let's start at the beginning, because most people will want to know how a driver like you suddenly getting into Formula One, suddenly getting into the big time, an incredible amount of potential earnings from a current Grand Prix driver. Now, that must have been a dream, but how did that dream start?
Firstly, mate, thanks for having me on here. I'm quite honoured. So just want to quickly say that this is great. And look,
and you're in good company. You've got some real good people on here.
so I've heard. So no, thank you, mate. Look, it's still I don't know. It still spins me out a little bit how it all happened. Because as a kid you have a dream, and I watched Formula One on TV, and it seemed I was obviously obsessed with it, and it was such a passion of mine to follow it. But it seems so distant and so far away from Perth, where I grew up, and Europe and the rest of the world seemed like it was literally another world.
But was it your father that had a little bit of motorsport in him?
Yeah, so I think I got I definitely know I got the passion from him. It's in the blood, as they say, and he never like forced it into me or drove me towards it. But he raced a bit growing up when I was a baby. So we would spend weekends at racetracks, and he was madly passionate about racing. And I think his dream was to be a race car driver, but didn't really have the means to do so. So, but once he built his own business, he could afford to go racing on weekends and do it as a hobby. So I think just being surrounded by the racing, the noise, the smell of the fuel, it was ingrained in me from such a young age, and I just loved it. I loved everything about it, and I think that's where it really grew. Watching it on TV, and then even just being in the car with him, like if he took off, a set of traffic lights and accelerated a little bit fast, I would just get that feeling inside me. Like I loved the little shot of adrenaline it gave me.
But I mean, there's been so many Australian successful racing drivers like you are. I mean, what do you do down there? Is it the water you drink, or maybe it's something else?
There's definitely something in the water. I think Australians in general, like big sporting nations. So we love kind of being outdoors. We love adventure. I think we love really testing ourselves and pushing ourselves. So there's that. And I feel we're not really afraid to do things, whether that's actually in action or in thinking to do something. Like in terms of, I think when we try to learn a new sport or a new skill, we go all in. And also in terms of having a dream, we seem to dream big, and if we think of something, it's like, all right, well, how can I do that?
In Australia, you've got a great history, but some good racetracks as well. There's quite a lot of motorsport in Australia today, and in your period, you must have been seeing some of those events taking place. And of course, you had Jack Brabham, who of course won 3 world championships. I mean, he was the quiet Australian, however. Some of you are quite noisy. Look at you now. You've got this big smile on. You've always got a smile on. I don't think Jack Brabham smiled twice in a Grand Prix weekend. You're the champion at that one.
Yeah, one thing for sure is I've and this has been from a kid. Like I've always had fun doing, I guess, just have fun living and doing things that I love doing, that excites me. So I was a little bit getting into Formula One. So I guess fast tracking, getting into Formula One, it did seem so stern and serious. And I felt a little bit out of place at first. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure this type of character, dealing with all these suits. But I said, look, if I'm gonna excel in this, I need to be me, and I need to have fun doing it. And I realized that after a while, my best results were coming when I was just the most relaxed and having fun doing what I loved. And it kind of takes it back to the fruit. Like I started go-karting because I just loved doing it, and it put a smile on my face. So
it all begins with go-karting now, though, doesn't it? I mean, karting is the thing. What age were you when you first got onto a kart?
So I want to ask you the same question after this. So I was 8 when I first drove a go-kart, and I think I started competing at 9. How old are you? A bit older.
I never saw a go-kart.
Yeah.
Karting wasn't there. Formula Ford wasn't there when Jackie Stewart started, or Jim Clark started, or Sterling Moss started, looking backwards. I started in sports cars, little sports cars, really road cars that were high performance road cars in club racing. But that wouldn't do to get to where you are today and the other big time racing drivers. Everybody seems to have karting as a beginning. How many years did you kart for?
So I 9 till 16, about 7 years, and I think I loved it because I was able to be in control of something at such a young age, and also no one else was doing it at school, so I felt like a bit of an outcast in a cool, funky way. Tell all the girls,
Oh yeah, racing drivers seem to do that in some cases. But
yeah.
Tell me this: you're a big boy. You're not. Look at my height. I mean, I'm up to probably just about your shoulders. I mean, that couldn't have been an advantage to you in a little kart.
Well, when I was young, I was quite little. Like I had a bit of a later growth spurt. So in like the early years of go-karting, it was fine. And then I got a little taller, but it was never it never seemed to be it never hindered me, I guess, in anything. And I think this generation now seems taller. Like I'm not that tall compared to, I think, like my teammate is taller, Ocon, and my teammate last year, Hulkenberg, was taller. So the little guys don't seem to be around too much anymore, but it's just the new generation, I guess.
Yeah, well, anyway. Well, let's jump ahead a little bit. Obviously, BMW had a lot to do with your beginning when you got into BMW over there. Was that the start of seeing the possibility of going further?
Yeah, I think so. That was the first. Formula BMW was the first category that really I was able to jump into after karts, and do a full season with, the slick tires, the wings. I did a bit of Formula Ford, but I felt more at home with the Formula BMW and having that grip. And I was also terrible at using a clutch. So like heel and toe, all this, I was like H-padded gearbox. So Formula Ford was, I feel like once I was into the gear for the corner, I would be able to drive through the corner with good speed, but I would lose a second just trying to find the gear.
So other gears weren't in your head. You decided it was an automatic, did you?
Dad would like sit on the side of the track like cringing because he could hear the crunching of the gears, and he tried to teach heel and toe for many years, but I never mastered it.
Let me go back a little bit though. What about mum and dad? I love your mum and dad. You know that Helen and I were in the Queen Mary, and we went from Cape Town, and we stopped in Perth, and I gave your mum and dad a call, and I had met them before because they had come to my house with you, because Mark Webber introduced and you came to see Helen and I in Clayton House. And I'll never forget it. I really, really enjoyed it because I had to get somebody to drive me there. And they said, well, how do you know somebody there? I said, yeah. And I mentioned your name, and they said, oh my God, I didn't know they lived here. So I had a lovely time. Your mum and dad was there, and your sister was there. We had lunch together. That was lovely. Your mum and dad still come to races with you, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and they've. I think, I mean, even that, like, so because as I said, Dad was he's such a fan of the sport. He loves motorsports, and he was such a fan growing up. So for him, I remember that day, vividly when you very kindly invited us over for lunch, and I told Dad, I was like, yeah, so Jackie's invited us to his place for lunch, and my dad was trying to like keep himself together, but he just, it was cool. Like, obviously, it's for me, I'm so caught up in just being involved in the sport, and I've got my own goals and dreams, and I'm just like, you kind of don't often get a chance to sit back and soak it all in. So I was like, yeah, like, cool, like, we're going to Jackie's house, and it's going to be fun. But I could see, like, to my dad, it was like, it was a really big deal. And not saying it wasn't for me, but you know what I mean. I'm just like, just in that motion. So he was, I mean, he's been really cool, and Mum as well. Like, in terms of, yes, he's such a fan of the sport, but he always knew when it was out of his depth, in terms of, like, he never wanted to step in and try to engineer the car, or I guess be one of those parents that are like overbearing and just trying to get involved.
No. He seems very nice and calm about the whole thing, and of course it's not always mummies that like their sons to be racing drivers.
No, that was convincing Mum. I mean, even convincing Dad was not easy, because he knew I guess the dangers of the sport and how tough it would be to even make it. Like, it just seemed like, why should his son be the first ever kid from birth to make it in Formula One? Like, it, and then Mum was, I feel for them, because I know, like, they know I'm doing what I love, so they're really happy for me, but I also put them through a lot of stress. So it's
but they're proud, and they're well proud of you. They are. Helmut Marko is the guy at Red Bull who seems to pick up all the young drivers. You were one of them. How did that come about?
Yeah, so that was so my first year in Europe was 2007, and I had a pretty solid first year. I didn't win or anything, but I had some, like, top 5 results in a very competitive championship. It was in Italy, and basically got an email at the end of the year and said, look, this is the Red Bull junior team. Would like you to come to Estoril in Portugal to have a sorry, there's a plane flying over. I don't know how loud that is.
Is that an aeroplane, or is that?
Yes, it's an aeroplane.
Is that a girlfriend? I don't know what the noise was.
So, all right, so I'll continue. But yeah, so basically just got an email, and it was, from, I guess, Helmut's secretary, just said, we'd like you to come to Estoril and do a test and see if you're good enough. Then
that was a big call, huh?
Oh, that was really what I went to Europe for. It was like, do the first year and do what we could to get signed by one of these junior teams, and the Red Bull one was on the top step of the podium. That was the one. Yeah. I remember it was such quite a high pressure test. It was like, all right, you get, I don't know, 5 laps or something. We're going to put some tires on and just do what you can. And Helmut was around the track watching. And anyway, I did very well, and I signed the contract then and there. And, he was very complimentary. Like, Helmut can be a very direct and I guess a hard man, but very complimentary, where he was like, you had beautiful car control, and he was just very excited. I wasn't sure he was always like this. So.
That was the big break, though.
100%.
Yeah. And then, of course, Mark Webber being Aussie, being in the team and so forth, that must have been a help to you.
Yeah, it was. Mark was great, because he done all the steps, before me, so I could gauge kind of everything through him and what he'd done and learnt and experienced, and I always felt I felt a bit, like, I didn't want him to feel obliged to help me, or just because we're Australian, because he was still doing his career, and I didn't want to take anything away from what he was trying to achieve. But he's still always called and checked in on me and asked how things were going and gave me advice. And
no, he's been very supportive, you know, but that you wouldn't maybe be fully aware of. But you know, when we talk a lot, Mark and I, you know, your name and your thing comes up a lot, and he's a very proud Australian, as you know, and therefore an Aussie doing well. What is the best event in your life? What is the biggest satisfaction, the biggest thrill you've ever had?
I mean, it's probably it's an expected answer, I guess, but it's the truth. It's Monaco, the Monaco Grand Prix. I mean, even look, not
a bad one to win.
Exactly. Like, but even before winning it, like I think even without a victory there, I would still say it's the coolest, greatest event, you know, to participate in. You know,
I was there for both of your big moments.
Oh.
The one you won, but more importantly, I think the one you didn't win, because you had such a terrifically long pit stop and you lost the Grand Prix. That must have been your biggest disappointment, was it?
Yeah, that place has had definitely my biggest low and my biggest high of my career, and the emotions that, I mean, that it's such the weekend is so high pressured and it's so intense. So to get a result there, to qualify on pole and to perform under all those circumstances, like you really feel like you've achieved something special. And you know, in 2016, done all those steps and to leading the race, then to have that pit stop, it was heartbreaking. You know, so to go back 2 years later and to do that, it was massive redemption. Yeah, it's the feeling, like the happiness I saw from so many people. For me, like just to win, and everyone was so excited for me. It was like that was the day which I really felt like, wow, this sport.
But to win in Monaco is the one you've got to do. You've got to have it in your record book. If you haven't run it there's something wrong. You know, Jim Clark never won in Monte Carlo, and he was probably the greatest driver that I ever raced against, and maybe the second greatest driver in the world for me, and he never won Monte Carlo. He drove Lotuses, and at that time, Lotuses were very fragile. My day in Monte Carlo, we were running with the cars, the street was got bumps and manhole covers all over the place. It was different. And on a car like a Lotus, which was very fragile, he had mechanical failures, and he never did win in Monaco. But you know, winning there was a big deal for me, and I know it was a big deal for you because I saw the whole aftermath of it, and you jumping into the swimming pool and doing the whole damn thing. I mean, tremendous. It's really a great moment in anybody's life.
Yeah, absolutely. And was it as big of an event back in your day? Like, was Monaco this amazing weekend?
No. It was the same then, Daniel. I mean, it was the most glamorous, the most colourful, the most exciting. The film festival was on in Cannes at the same time, so all of these fancy folk would come over, the great big superstars. In my day, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Elizabeth Taylor and God knows who. But, you know, that I know that was a big one for you. There's one thing that slightly you're different than anybody else. What's this business about pouring champagne into your shoes and having me having to drink the damn thing? What about that? Where did that come from?
Oh, so a little bit, probably as I touched on earlier, where I felt like the sport was a little probably stiff at times and
getting dull.
Yeah, like I guess like I feel the sport has so much to offer, and it is such a cool sport, and not always probably perceived that way from the outside, and it's only really just now kind of broken into more mainstream. I think it's kind of broken into, like, you know, the USA, and more people know what Formula One is, where they didn't used to, I feel. But the shoey. So I was like, okay, even I would see these guys win races or get podiums and stand there as if they weren't happy, and I was like, come on, like it's a big achievement. Like let's enjoy the moment. So it was really an Australian thing. Some friends of mine were doing it, and it was starting to spread a bit more. And I was like, okay, let's my next podium, I'll pour the champagne in my shoe and drink out of it, and everyone will probably hate it.
Oh my, I know what's coming. This is becoming a ritual. Yay! Bravo! Good vintage.
Would you like some?
I'd love some. Yeah. Yeah. Come
Really?
on.
Oh.
You've done it before. I want to.
You're a good man.
Thank you. Cheers!
I don't think too many people enjoyed the privilege of drinking champagne out of your shoes, I have to say.
It's also like that's kind of the thing as well. It's for me, it's great and it's fun, and it's also can be a little bit. It's a bit. I guess it's a bit of a stitch up, you know. Like if I win the race and then I'm getting the first loser to drink, it's like insult to injury. So it's nice.
Well, it was in Canada that I had to drink out of your shoe. I'll never forget it. Because I was on the podium. It was a Rolex Grand Prix and so forth. You know, so anyway, that was a great part of your life. You know, your mum and dad are so fond of you and care for you, and it's a mum and dad's nightmare. I didn't really want Paul to drive racing cars, you know, and he didn't do Formula One, but had the wisdom not to do it because we were desperate. And of course, motor racing was more dangerous then. But, you know, Helen's been a big part of this, and part of what you're doing today is going to help Dementia. Now, in Australia, you very kindly came along and participated with Mark when we had that cocktail party and dinner party to raise money for Race Against Dementia, and we're still doing that. So I want to thank you for that, because Helen was a big part of my life. I mean, she was my timekeeper. Your girlfriends, many of them, have been not your timekeepers because there's nothing to do. It's all electronic now, and they're going to stand in the garage or just look at it from the Paddock Club. Helen was one of the team. She had to do the lap charting as well as doing the timekeeping. So she was a big part of my life, and you know her because you met her a lot of times. So we're raising money, and by the way, we've just done a great alignment with Australia for dementia. So that's going to be a new big thing to try and help. But I want to thank you for having played a part in trying to help us. We had to cancel the one in the Grand Prix of Australia this year because of the virus that happened. So that night we were planning to have 580 people seated. Can you imagine? For a dinner, for fundraising. We would have made a lot of money for Race Against Dementia, and that's the name of the thing, as you know. And you were going to be there, and Mark was going to be there, and Nando Parado, the guy who, you know, climbed into the Andes, you know, when the aircraft crashed, and he's going to be doing memories with us here as well. So, Daniel, I thank you for what you've done for Helen and for and for the charity. And you're a very proud Australian, and I'm really happy that you've been a part of my life as well. So I know you've got other things to do today, and I understand you're going to go to a new team next year again. You're going to go to McLaren. Now that's something very big, because McLaren are one of the great names of Formula One. How did that come about, as a final question from me?
Well, actually, going back, I mean, anyone who's ever met Lady Helen, your beautiful wife, how can you not want to support? So that was a no-brainer for me, and I appreciate your gratitude, but that was definitely very, very happy to help at any time. So yeah, the McLaren thing was it was already well, it started back in 2018, and you actually kindly called me. It wasn't the first time. Over the years, you've actually been very, very kind to call and give me advice. And it was after the Baku incident with myself and Max, and there was some unstable ground at the time, and it was a moment of thought for me. And I remember you called me. I think it was the Tuesday after the race. We spoke for probably an hour and a half, and yeah, I had a lot of thinking to do. So McLaren was one of those teams that I did have meetings with and consider. And it got close, but I didn't feel like that was quite there yet at the time. So now 2 years later, the opportunities come up again, and I feel that they're in a much better place. They still were very keen on having me in the team. So I think that as well, they didn't take me saying no 2 years ago personally. They understood the situation, and they've still shown a lot of interest in wanting me on board. So I've deep down been a fan of them for many years, obviously going back in the past as well. I really feel it's a good time to make this next chapter happen.
Well, it's a wonderful team, great history to it, great style. The headquarters are the finest in the world, and by the way, they're helping a lot with Race Against Dementia. Red Bull and McLaren are deeply involved, because we're finding that there's been no progress with beating dementia. Formula One is faster, problem solving is faster, their technology is faster, their movements are faster. That's why we're using them with Race Against Dementia. So when you're with McLaren, you're going to be even closer to us.
Amazing.
Daniel, thank you very much for joining me. You've got other things to do and other Grand Prix to get into. So a big thank you from Helen and I, and look forward to catching up with you. Because of the epidemic at the moment, we're not getting to Grand Prix. Only the racing drivers and the immediate team people are there. But look forward to catching up with you the next time we can. And lots of love, and thank you again for coming on board.
Thank you for having me. You're a good man. Send my love, please.